I should have been terrified when I opened that door. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, seen. For 30 days, anonymous letters had been appearing in my mailbox. Not threats, not demands, just observations. You stopped to help that lost dog on Tuesday. The world needs more people like you. You sang along to the radio at the red light. I hope you never stop finding joy in small moments. They were love letters from a stranger who noticed everything about me that everyone else overlooked. Then they stopped. 3 silent days that felt like abandonment. On the 4th day came the knock. He stood there with wildflowers in rough, tattooed hands. A white man, completely bald, ink covering every visible inch of skin like a map of a life I couldn't read yet. His eyes held the kind of exhaustion that comes from surviving things you're not supposed to survive. "I'm the one who's been writing to you," he said, voice low and careful. I should have slammed the door. Instead, I said, "Come in." I didn't know he'd been released from prison 5 months ago. I didn't know the letters were his way back to believing in humanity. All I knew was that for the first time in my life, someone had really looked at me, and I wanted to know why. You will feel so many emotions in this story of second chances and forbidden love. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. I should have been terrified when I opened that door. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Seen. For 30 days, anonymous letters had been appearing in my mailbox. Not threats, not demands, just observations that made me feel like someone was paying attention to the parts of me everyone else missed. They arrived on Tuesdays and Fridays, written in careful handwriting that looked like each letter had been practiced. You stopped to help that lost dog on Tuesday. The world needs more people like you. You sang along to the radio at the red light. I hope you never stop finding joy in small moments. At first, I told myself it was creepy. I even filed a report with the apartment office. But what could they do? The letters weren't threatening. They were just real, honest, like someone was documenting my life with a tenderness I'd never experienced. By the 2nd week, I was reading them over coffee. By the 3rd week, I was keeping them in a shoebox under my bed. By the 4th week, I was waiting for them like they were love letters, which I suppose they were. Then they stopped. 3 days of checking the mailbox and finding nothing but bills and grocery store flyers. The silence felt like rejection, which was insane because I didn't even know who was writing them. On the 4th day of silence, I came home from my shift at the veterinary clinic exhausted, my scrubs covered in dog hair, my feet aching. That's when I saw him sitting on the front steps of my apartment building. He was white, completely bald, with tattoos covering his arms, neck, and hands, dark ink that told stories I couldn't decipher from a distance. He stood when he saw me, and I noticed he held wildflowers, the kind that grow in empty lots and along highways, the kind no one thinks to pick. He was tall, broad-shouldered, but he held himself carefully, like he was trying not to take up too much space. His eyes were gray and tired, but when they met mine, something in them brightened. "Sarah," his voice was quiet, controlled. I stopped walking, my keys clutched in my hand. "How do you know my name?" "I'm the one who's been writing to you." He didn't smile. He didn't move closer. He just stood there like he was waiting for judgment he knew was coming. My brain screamed at me to run inside, lock the door, call someone. But my heart, my stupid, lonely heart, remembered every word he'd written, the way he'd seen me helping Mrs. Chen carry groceries, the way he'd noticed I always ordered the same coffee, the way he'd described my laugh as proof that good things still exist. "Why?" I asked, not moving. He looked down at the flowers, then back at me. "Because you're the first person in 2 years who looked at me like I was still human." I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But something in the way he said it, the rawness, the honesty, made me take a step forward instead of backward. "What's your name?" I asked. "Marcus." He held out the flowers, his hands shaking slightly. Up close, I could see the tattoos were prison tattoos, crude, faded, the kind done with makeshift needles. On his right forearm, I could make out numbers, a date, maybe, or a sentence. I took the flowers. They smelled like summer and freedom. "Come inside," I said, and watched his eyes widen with surprise. "I want to know why you've been watching me." He followed me up the stairs, keeping a respectful distance. Neither of us knew that decision, my decision to let him in, would change everything. But as I unlocked my apartment door and held it open for a stranger covered in tattoos and secrets, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like someone finally saw me, and I wanted to see him back. He stepped inside, and I noticed something. He didn't look around my apartment like most people would. He looked at the door, checking the locks, the hinges. "You should get a deadbolt," he said quietly. "This neighborhood isn't safe for a woman living alone." Marcus started appearing everywhere, and I couldn't decide if I should be worried or relieved. The morning after he came to my apartment, after we talked for 3 hours about books, about why he noticed me, about everything except what those numbers on his forearm meant, I saw him at the bus stop near my clinic. He didn't approach me. He just nodded, hands in his jacket pockets, then walked away when my bus arrived. 2 days later, he was across the street from the clinic when I left work. This time I crossed to him. "Are you following me?" "Making sure you get home safe," he said simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Guy's been watching you. Dark hoodie, always on his phone. He was here yesterday too." I glanced around nervously. "I haven't noticed anyone." "That's the problem." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have to notice, but until that changes, I will." I should have found it controlling, possessive. Instead, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't known I was carrying. Living alone in the city, working late shifts, walking home in the dark, I'd normalized the constant low-grade fear that came with being a woman navigating the world alone. The next week, Marcus fixed the broken lock on my building's back entrance. He didn't ask permission. He just showed up one Saturday morning with tools and worked for 2 hours in silence. When Mrs. Chen thanked him, he barely acknowledged it. When I brought him coffee, he looked at me like I'd handed him something precious. "You don't have to keep doing this," I said, sitting beside him on the front steps as he gathered his tools. "I know." He didn't look at me. "But I can't stop noticing things that are broken. Spent 2 years in a place where broken things stayed broken. Now I see them everywhere." "Prison." The word came out before I could stop it. He went still, then slowly met my eyes. "Yeah, prison." My stomach dropped, but I didn't move away. "How long?" 5 years. Got out 6 months ago. 5 years. I did the math quickly. He would have been in his late 20s when he went in. Now he was 33, with tattoos that told stories of survival and a gentleness that seemed impossible given where he'd been. "What did you—" I started, but he shook his head. "Not yet," he said quietly. "Let me be someone you don't have to be afraid of for a little longer." But I wasn't afraid. That was the strangest part. With Marcus, I felt safer than I had in years. That safety was tested the following Tuesday when my ex-boyfriend, Derek, showed up at the clinic. We'd broken up 8 months ago after I'd caught him going through my phone, accusing me of cheating because I'd smiled at a male customer. He'd been texting me for months, messages that started apologetic and escalated to angry. I'd blocked him on everything. But apparently, he'd decided that showing up in person was his next move. "We need to talk, Sarah." He grabbed my arm as I left through the back door. "Let go of me, Derek." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You think you can just ignore me after everything I did for you?" Then Marcus was there. I hadn't seen him approach, but suddenly he was beside us, his presence filling the narrow alley like a storm cloud. She said, "Let go." Marcus's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something that made Derek's hand drop from my arm immediately. Derek puffed up, trying to assert dominance. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who understands boundaries." Marcus positioned himself between us, not threatening, just immovable. "Walk away." Derek looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and something he saw made him step back. Maybe it was the tattoos. Maybe it was the way Marcus stood, absolutely still, like he'd learned to conserve energy for when it really mattered. Maybe it was the look in his eyes that said he'd survived worse than Derek could imagine. "This isn't over," Derek muttered, but he was already backing toward his car. "Yeah, it is," Marcus said, and waited until Derek drove away before turning to me. "You okay?" I was shaking, adrenaline flooding my system. "How did you know?" "Told you, I notice things." He kept his distance and giving me space. "You want me to call someone? Friend? Family?" "No, I wrapped my arms around myself. "Thank you." He nodded, then started to leave. "Marcus, wait." I caught up to him. I need to know something. He turned, and I saw him brace himself. A friend from the clinic did some digging after I mentioned you, I said, pulling out my phone. The news article was already loaded. Is this you? His face went blank as he read the headline. Local man sentenced to 5 years for armed robbery. Yes, he said quietly, meeting my eyes. That's me. And now you know why I shouldn't be here. Why you should have slammed that door in my face. He turned to walk away, but I grabbed his arm, the one with the prison tattoos. The numbers I now understood marked the day he went in. Marcus, wait. My voice broke. I need to hear it from you. Not from a newspaper. From you. We sat in my apartment, the news article open on my coffee table between us like evidence in a trial. Marcus hadn't tried to run. He'd followed me upstairs, sat where I indicated, and waited for judgment with the patience of someone who'd learned to accept consequences. Tell me, I said, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea I couldn't drink. All of it. He looked at his hands, those rough, tattooed hands that had fixed my lock and held wildflowers. I was 28, engaged, working construction, trying to save up for a wedding, a house, the whole dream. Then the company went under. No severance, no notice, just gone. His voice was flat, factual, like he was reading someone else's story. My fiancée was pregnant. We were 3 months behind on rent. I had $200 to my name and a baby coming in 5 months. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. My buddy from work, Jake, he said he knew a way to make quick money. Said it was easy, just driving, no risk. I knew better. I knew what he was really asking. But when you're desperate, when you're about to lose everything, you tell yourself stories. You convince yourself it's just this once, that you're doing it for the right reasons. Armed robbery? I said softly. Convenience store on the edge of town. Jake had a gun. I drove. That was supposed to be my part, just drive. But the clerk reached for something under the counter. Jake panicked, and he closed his eyes. He shot the ceiling. No one got hurt, but it didn't matter. Armed robbery is armed robbery. The clerk's face, that terror, I still see it. I'll always see it. What happened to your fiancé? The baby. Pain flickered across his face. She left before the trial. Said she couldn't raise a child with a criminal for a father. I signed away my rights. Figured she was right. What kind of father would I be? He looked at me then, and his eyes were wet. I lost everything, and I deserved to. That's what I accepted in prison. I deserved every single day. Where's the baby now? I asked, my heart breaking. Adopted. Good family. She's 5 now. Her name is Emma, but she doesn't know I exist. That's how it should be. The apartment was silent except for the distant sound of traffic. I thought about the letters. The way he'd noticed me helping a lost dog, bringing Mrs. Chen groceries, singing in my car. The way he'd seen kindness and celebrated it like it was rare and precious. The letters, I said. Why did you start writing them? Parole requirement. Weekly check-ins with a counselor. She asked what I wanted from my new life. I said I wanted to notice good things again. In prison, you train yourself not to see, not to notice beauty or kindness because it hurts too much. She suggested I practice observing without taking, appreciating without possessing. So I started watching the world. And then I saw you. Watching me, I said, and he flinched. I know how it sounds. I know I shouldn't have. But you were the first person I saw who reminded me that good people exist. You were kind for no reason. You helped people even when you were tired. You laughed like you hadn't forgotten how I needed to tell you that it mattered, that someone saw it. So you stalked me. Yes. He didn't make excuses. I justified it by telling myself I was just observing, just documenting beauty, but I crossed lines. I knew where you worked, where you lived, your routine. If you want to call the cops, I'll wait here while you do. I looked at this man, this ex-convict, this person who'd made a terrible choice born of desperation, who'd served his time and was now trying to rebuild a life from ruins. I thought about Derek, who'd never been to prison but had grabbed me, ignored my boundaries, made me feel small. I thought about Marcus fixing my lock, warning me about danger, keeping his distance even when I'd invited him closer. Everyone told me to run, I said quietly. My friend at the clinic showed me your mugshot and said I was crazy for even talking to you. Derek's sister texted me. Apparently word got around saying I was putting myself in danger. They're not wrong, Marcus said. I am dangerous. Not because I'd hurt you. I wouldn't. I'd die first. But because being with me means dealing with this forever. The judgment, the fear, the fact that one mistake follows you for life. Do you still think about doing it again? I asked. When things get hard? Every day I think about it. Not about robbing anyone. God, no. But about the desperation. About how thin the line is between being okay and losing everything. That's what prison taught me. We're all one bad break away from impossible choices. I set down my tea and moved to sit beside him on the couch. He tensed, surprised. I'm not going to call the cops, I said. And I'm not going to run. Sarah, I should make my own choices, I interrupted. And I'm choosing to believe that what you did doesn't define who you are now. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. Why? Because when Derek grabbed me, you put yourself between us. Because you fixed my lock without asking for anything. Because your letters saw me as a whole person, not just someone to want. I took a breath. Because I've done things I'm not proud of too. Maybe not illegal things, but I've hurt people. I've made selfish choices. The only difference is I didn't get caught. That's not the same, isn't it? You made a choice born of desperation and love for your family. I stayed with Derek for 2 years because I was afraid of being alone. Which one of us is really the coward? He shook his head. You're trying to make me feel better, but... My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, and Derek's voice came through, slurred and angry. Gee, you think your tattooed boyfriend scares me? You think he can protect you? I know where you live, Sarah, and I know about his parole conditions. One call to his PO about him harassing my girlfriend, and he goes right back to prison. The line went dead. Marcus's face had gone pale. What did he say? I told him, and watched him stand, running his hands over his bald head. The gesture of a man calculating options. I have to stay away from you, he said. Or if he reports me for anything, violating boundaries, stalking, harassment, I go back, and in prison, I'm nothing. I can't protect you from in there. Then we protect each other, I said, standing to face him. Because I'm not letting Derek win, and I'm not letting you disappear. Not now. Marcus looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd never seen before. Hope and terror. Sarah, if I stay, this gets worse before it gets better. Are you sure? I wasn't sure, but I took his hand anyway. Teach me how to fight back. You survived prison. Teach me how to survive this. The knock on my door made us both freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Derek standing there, swaying, his fist raised to knock again. Marcus moved toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. If you touch him, you violate parole, I whispered. So what do we do? Marcus looked at the door, then at me. We call the police. We do this the right way, even if it means everyone knows about me. The police took 2 hours to arrive. By then, Derek had kicked my door 3 times, screamed threats through the wood, and finally passed out in the hallway. The responding officers knew Marcus immediately. One of them had testified at his trial. I watched Marcus's face go blank, that prison mask sliding into place as he answered their questions with careful, respectful precision. Yes, sir. 5 years armed robbery, released 6 months ago. No, sir, I haven't touched him. Haven't made threats, haven't violated any terms of my parole. Yes, sir, I understand how this looks. They arrested Derek for public intoxication and harassment. But the younger officer pulled me aside as they left. Ma'am, I don't know what your relationship is with Marcus Sullivan, but you should know. I know about his record, I interrupted. And I know he hasn't done anything wrong tonight. The officer looked uncomfortable. People don't change, ma'am. Not really. Be careful. After they left, Marcus sat on my couch, his head in his hands. This is what I meant. This is what being with me looks like. Cops assuming I'm the threat. Everyone warning you away. Your life getting complicated because of my past. My life was already complicated, I said, sitting beside him. And Derek's been stalking me for months. The difference is that now someone actually sees it happening. Someone actually cares enough to stand between me and danger. He looked at me, exhausted. You should let me go. It's cleaner. I don't want clean. I want honest. Over the next week, I learned what Marcus's life looked like. He lived in a studio apartment above a laundromat, working 2 jobs, one as a night janitor at an office building, one doing day labor through a temp agency. He made $800 a month and sent half of it to a fund for Emma, his daughter he'd never met. The rest covered rent, food, and bus fare. I went with him to his weekly parole check-in. His officer, a tired woman named Rodriguez, looked at me with something between pity and exasperation. "You his girlfriend?" "Friend," I said, because I didn't know what else we were. She turned to Marcus. "Any violations? Any contact with known felons? Any issues at work?" "No, ma'am. Working steady. Staying clean." She made notes, then looked at both of us. "Marcus is one of the good ones. Shows up, follows rules, actually trying to rebuild. But statistics don't care about effort. 70% of released felons reoffend within 5 years. The system's designed to fail them." She looked at me directly. "You ready for that reality?" In the parking lot, Marcus leaned against the building, his face tilted toward the weak winter sun. "She's right. The odds are bad." "What are the odds I find someone who writes me love letters because I helped a lost dog?" I countered. "What are the odds someone notices me at all?" "Sarah, I spent 2 years with Derek, and he never once asked me what I wanted from life. You asked in your 3rd letter. You wrote, 'I hope your dreams are as beautiful as your kindness.' Derek didn't even know I had dreams." Marcus turned to look at me. "What are they? Your dreams?" "I want to open my own veterinary practice. Small, neighborhood clinic. Affordable care for people who can't afford the fancy places." I'd never said it out loud before. I want to help people who love their animals, but are one emergency away from having to choose between rent and a vet bill. "That's a good dream." His voice was soft. "You'll do it, too. I can tell." "How?" "Because you're the kind of person who picks up wildflowers and calls them beautiful. You see value in things other people overlook." We stood there in the parking lot of the parole office, and something shifted. Not romance, not yet, but partnership. The recognition that we were both people trying to build something from broken pieces. "Let me help with Derek," Marcus said. "Not violence, not threats. But I know how to document harassment. I know how to build a case. Prison taught me a lot about the legal system." We spent the next 3 weeks building evidence. Marcus showed me how to log every text, every call, every time Derek showed up. He installed a Ring camera on my door, purchased with money I knew he couldn't afford, and showed me how to back everything up to the cloud. When Derek showed up at my clinic, Marcus called the police himself, standing witness from across the street, his phone recording the entire interaction. "Why are you doing this?" I asked one night as we reviewed footage of Derek circling my building. We were in my apartment, takeout containers spread across the coffee table, working like partners in an investigation. "Because you invited me in when you should have slammed the door. Because you looked at me like I was human. Because—" He stopped, then continued quietly. "Because you're giving me a reason to stay clean, to keep building, to believe I might deserve something good." I reached over and took his hand. The first time I'd initiated touch. His fingers closed around mine, careful, like I was something fragile. "You do deserve good things," I said. "You've served your time. You're doing everything right. At some point, you have to forgive yourself." "I don't know how to do that." His voice cracked. "I ruined my fiancé's life, my daughter's life. I traumatized a clerk who was just trying to earn minimum wage. How do you forgive yourself for that? You build something better. You help people. You become someone that 5-year-old girl would be proud to know, even if she never knows you." Marcus pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. "I need to go. Early shift tomorrow." But before he left, he turned at the door. "Sarah, this thing between us, I need you to know it can't be what it might have been if I were someone else. I can't take you out without people staring. I can't meet your family without them running background checks. I can't even kiss you without wondering if I'm taking advantage of your kindness." "So don't take advantage," I said, standing. "Ask permission." He stared at me, and I watched him wrestle with want and propriety, hope and self-preservation. "Can I?" He stopped, started again. "Would it be okay if I kissed you?" "Yes." He crossed the room slowly, giving me time to change my mind. His hands came up to frame my face, careful, trembling slightly. "Tell me if this is a mistake," he whispered. "Tell me I'm not taking advantage. I kissed him before he could finish, and tasted freedom and fear and something like hope. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "I've got nothing to offer you except broken pieces and bad history," he said. "I know," I smiled. "But maybe broken pieces can build something new." The knock on my door shattered the moment. Not Derek's aggressive pounding, but official. Authoritative. Marcus and I looked at each other, and I saw fear flash across his face, the kind of fear born from experience. Through the peephole, I saw two men in suits. "Marcus Sullivan," one called. "We need to talk to you about Jake Morrison. Your former partner was found dead this morning, and you're on our list." Jake Morrison had been murdered, stabbed 7 times outside a bar at 2 a.m. The detectives sat in my living room, watching Marcus with the specific attention reserved for people they'd already decided were guilty. I stood beside him, my hand on his shoulder, feeling him go rigid with the effort of staying calm. "Where were you between midnight and 3 a.m. last Tuesday?" Detective Ramirez asked, his pen poised. "Here," Marcus said immediately. "We were reviewing security footage from Sarah's camera. Derek Morrison." He paused. "Wait, Morrison?" The detectives exchanged glances. "Derek Morrison is the victim's younger brother. Did you know that?" The blood drained from Marcus's face. "No. He never mentioned Jesus. I never made the connection." "Convenient," the other detective, Waters, said. "Your former partner, who testified against you at trial, ends up dead right around the same time you're having issues with his brother." "I didn't know they were related." Marcus's voice was careful, controlled, but I heard the panic underneath. "I haven't spoken to Jake since I was sentenced. I didn't even know he was out. He got out 3 months after you. Good behavior, plus testifying against you, got him a reduced sentence." Ramirez's tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp. "You must have been angry about that. He pulls the trigger. You drive the car. But he serves a quarter of your time." I watched Marcus's jaw tighten. I was angry for about 2 years. Then I accepted that I made my choices. What Jake did or didn't do wasn't my business anymore. Except now he's dead, and you're involved with his brother's ex-girlfriend. Waters leaned forward. "That's a lot of coincidence, Marcus. I didn't know Derek and Jake were brothers until right now. Check my browser history, my search history, there's no connection. I never looked up Jake, never tried to find him. But you did look up Derek," Ramirez said, pulling out a printed report. "Multiple times. Starting 3 weeks ago." "Because he was stalking Sarah," I interrupted. "We've been documenting his harassment. We filed reports. Check with Officer Rodriguez at the parole office. Marcus has been doing everything by the book." The detectives looked at me like I was a child defending something I didn't understand. "Ma'am, you understand that Marcus served time for armed robbery with Jake Morrison. That Jake's testimony was the main reason Marcus got the full 5 years. And now Jake's dead, Derek is being investigated for stalking, and Marcus is conveniently positioned as both victim and potential suspect." "Are you charging him?" I demanded. "Not yet, but don't leave town, Marcus. We'll be in touch." After they left, Marcus sat motionless, staring at nothing. I'd never seen him like this. Not afraid exactly, but defeated. Like he'd been running from something he knew would eventually catch him. "I didn't kill Jake," he said quietly. "But no one's going to believe that." "I believe you. Sarah, they're going to dig into everything. They'll find out I've been at your place multiple nights. They'll twist it into obsession. They'll say I manipulated you to get to Derek, to get revenge on Jake's family. Then we prove them wrong." He looked at me with something like despair. "You can't prove a negative. I can't prove I didn't kill him. I don't have an alibi for every hour of every day. I work alone at night, live alone. All I have is my word, and that's worth nothing with my record." The next morning, Officer Rodriguez called. "Marcus, you need to come in, now." At the parole office, she laid out photos. Marcus outside Derek's apartment building. Marcus following Derek's car. Marcus at the bar where Jake died, time-stamped 3 days before the murder. "But I can explain all of these," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its steadiness. "I was documenting Derek's movements for Sarah's restraining order. I was building a case. Or you were stalking him, planning something." Rodriguez looked genuinely sad. "Marcus, you're violating the terms of your parole. I have to report this. You understand what that means? Revocation hearing, back to prison, pending the murder investigation. I grabbed Marcus's arm. That he was helping me. I asked him to do this. And that's going to be your testimony. Rodriguez looked at me. You asked an ex-convict on parole to stalk and document your ex-boyfriend, who happens to be the brother of the man he served time with. That's your story. It sounded insane. It sounded exactly like what the detectives had suggested. Manipulation, obsession, revenge. Marcus stood. When do I turn myself in? You have 48 hours to get your affairs in order. In my car, Marcus was silent. I drove aimlessly, unable to process what was happening. Everything had fallen apart so quickly. One murder, one connection we hadn't known about, and suddenly Marcus was being pulled back into the system he'd fought so hard to escape. I have to tell you something, Marcus said finally. Jake contacted me 2 months ago. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What? He called me, drunk, angry, said I'd ruined his life by getting caught, said he'd never forgive me. Marcus's voice was flat. I hung up, blocked the number, told myself it didn't matter, that it was just old resentment. But if they find out he called me? Marcus, why didn't you tell the police? Because it makes me look guilty. He ran his hands over his head. Ex-partner calls, threatens me, ends up dead 2 months later. Plus I'm involved with his brother's ex. I look like a revenge-obsessed killer. I pulled over, parking in a grocery store lot. Did you kill him? No. Did you hire someone? Plan it? Celebrate when you heard? No. I felt nothing. Just tired. He looked at me. I spent 5 years hating Jake. Then I got out and realized hate was just another prison. So I let it go. And now it doesn't matter because I'm going back anyway. Not if we find out who really killed him. Marcus laughed bitterly. Sarah, you're not a detective. This isn't a movie. No, but I'm someone who cares about you. I grabbed his hand. We have 48 hours. Tell me everything. Every interaction with Jake. Every detail about Derek. Everything. Why? Why are you doing this? Because you're the first person who ever saw me as more than just someone to overlook. Because you fixed my lock, brought me flowers, wrote me letters that made me feel like I mattered. My voice broke. Because I'm falling for you, Marcus, and I'm not letting them take you away without a fight. He pulled me across the center console, his arms wrapping around me like I was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry I brought this into your life. Stop apologizing for existing, I said fiercely. Stop acting like you don't deserve to fight back. We spent the next hours reconstructing everything. Marcus's phone records showed Jake's call, but also showed Marcus had blocked the number and never responded. We pulled up the Ring camera footage and realized something crucial. The timestamps of Marcus at Derek's apartment coincided exactly with Derek's harassment of me. Marcus wasn't stalking Derek. He was documenting Derek stalking me. But as we built our case, my phone rang. Detective Ramirez. Sarah, we need you to come in for questioning. We've received information that you might have been involved in planning Jake Morrison's murder. Don't bring Marcus. Just you. The line went dead. Marcus looked at me, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for me. They're going to try to turn you against me, he said. They're going to offer you immunity if you testify that I planned this, that I manipulated you. I won't, I said. But we both knew that in 46 hours, Marcus would be back in prison, and I'd be the only one left to find the truth. The interrogation room smelled like bad coffee and fear. Detective Ramirez sat across from me, Waters standing by the door like he was guarding against my escape. A lawyer I couldn't afford sat beside me. Marcus had called in a favor with a public defender he'd met in prison. Sarah, we know you're a victim here, Ramirez said, his tone friendly. Marcus Sullivan has a history of manipulation. He stalked you, inserted himself into your life, and now he's using you as an alibi and an excuse for stalking the Morrison family. That's not what happened. Then tell us what did happen from the beginning. He slid a legal pad toward me. And remember, anything you say can be used in court. So if you've been helping him cover up a crime, now's the time to tell the truth. I spent 2 hours walking them through everything. The letters, the first meeting, Derek's harassment, Marcus's help. I showed them screenshots, camera footage, the log we'd been keeping. But with every piece of evidence I presented, they twisted it. So Marcus knew exactly when you'd be vulnerable, Ramirez said. He watched you for a month, learned your patterns, then showed up exactly when you'd be most isolated. He was trying to show me he saw me. He was grooming you. Waters interrupted. Classic predator behavior. Make the victim feel special, create dependence, then use them. That's not what happened. Then why didn't you call the police when you found out he'd been watching you? Ramirez leaned forward. Most women would have filed a restraining order, but you invited him inside. Why? Because he was honest? Because he showed me respect? Because he'd been conditioning you for weeks to trust him? Ramirez pulled out a photo, Marcus and me, taken through my apartment window, kissing. This was taken the night before Jake Morrison died. You don't think it's suspicious that Marcus finally made his move right before his former partner was killed? The lawyer beside me finally spoke. My client isn't on trial here. Unless you're charging her with something, this interview is over. But as we stood to leave, Ramirez played his final card. Sarah, Marcus Sullivan's fingerprints were found at the murder scene, on the murder weapon, his story about never seeing Jake again. It's a lie. The room spun. That's impossible. Is it? Or has he been lying to you this whole time? I looked at the lawyer, who looked grim. Don't say anything else. Not without me present. Outside the police station, I called Marcus. They found your prints at the scene, on the knife. Silence. Then, I know. You know. Marcus, what the hell? It's my old kitchen knife, from before I went to prison. Jake must have kept it when my fiancé cleared out my stuff. I never thought. His voice broke. Sarah, I didn't kill him. But that knife, my prints all over it. No one's going to believe me now. Where are you? My apartment, packing my stuff. Rodriguez called, they moved up the timeline. I have to turn myself in tomorrow morning. I drove to his place, taking the stairs 2 at a time to his studio above the laundromat. He'd packed everything he owned into 2 boxes. Clothes, some books, the letters I'd sent him after he'd sent me his life reduced to cardboard and regret. We can fight this, I said, but even I heard the desperation in my voice. With what? Mystery prints? Unknown killers? Sarah, I'm a convicted felon whose prints are on the murder weapon that killed his former partner, the partner who testified against him, while dating that partner's brother's ex-girlfriend. He laughed bitterly. I couldn't have framed myself better if I'd tried. So you're just giving up. I'm accepting reality. He sat on his bare mattress. Maybe this is what I deserve. Maybe I was fooling myself thinking I could have a normal life, that I could have you. I knelt in front of him, forcing him to look at me. The Marcus I know doesn't give up. The Marcus I know spent 5 years in prison and came out determined to be better. To notice beauty. To protect people. That Marcus didn't have a murder charge hanging over his head. That Marcus also didn't have someone fighting with him. I took his hands. You taught me how to document everything, how to build a case. Now let me use those skills for you. Sarah, there's no evidence. There's always evidence. Derek and Jake were brothers. Jake died right when Derek was escalating his harassment. That's not coincidence. My mind was racing. What if Derek killed Jake? What if he set you up because he blamed you for something? That's a stretch. Is it? Jake testified against you. You served the full sentence while he got reduced time. If I were Derek and my brother ruined his life because of some job gone wrong, I'd be angry. And if that same ex-con started protecting my ex-girlfriend, started making me look like the bad guy, I stood, pacing. What if Derek killed Jake, used your knife to frame you, and planned to take me back once you were in prison? Marcus looked at me like I'd suggested we rob a bank. Oh, that's a lot of what-ifs. But it makes sense. Derek's been erratic, obsessive. What if it's not just about me? What if it's about revenge? Even if you're right, how do we prove it? I turn myself in tomorrow morning. I pulled out my phone. Then we have tonight. And I know someone who might help us. Officer Rodriguez met us at a 24-hour diner at 11 p.m., looking exhausted and skeptical. I laid out my theory. Derek killing Jake, framing Marcus, planning to isolate me. She listened, making notes, her face unreadable. It's plausible, she said finally. But plausible isn't evidence. You need proof. What about Jake's phone records? Marcus asked. If he called me, who else did he call? Rodriguez nodded slowly. That's actually not a bad idea. Let me make some calls. While she worked her contacts, Marcus and I sat in the diner, drinking terrible coffee, watching the clock tick toward his surrender. His hand rested on the table between us, and I covered it with mine. Whatever happens tomorrow, I said, I want you to know something. You didn't manipulate me. You didn't trick me. You gave me the most honest relationship I've ever had. Sarah, let me finish. Everyone in my life has wanted me to be smaller, quieter, less. Derek wanted me manageable. My family wanted me conventional. But you? You saw me helping a lost dog and wrote me a love letter. You noticed me singing in my car and called it joy. You made me feel like my kindness wasn't weakness. It was strength. I don't deserve you, Marcus said, his voice rough. But God, I'm grateful I got to know you. Rodriguez returned then, her face serious. I got the phone records. Jake called Derek 17 times in the week before he died. The last call was an hour before his murder. She looked at Marcus. Derek has an alibi for the time of death. He was at Sarah's clinic, caught on camera making a scene. But she paused. The security footage from the bar shows Jake arguing with someone in the parking lot, someone who fits Derek's description. But the timestamp is wrong. It shows Derek in 2 places at once. I leaned forward. Unless Derek manipulated the timestamp, he's a software engineer. He'd know how to do that. Rodriguez nodded slowly. It's enough to delay the surrender, enough to ask more questions. But Marcus, she looked at him seriously, if this doesn't pan out, you're going back, and it'll be worse for running. I'm not running, Marcus said. I'm fighting. For the first time in my life, I'm actually fighting back. The diner door opened then, and Derek walked in, his eyes finding mine immediately. He smiled and pulled out a gun. Everything happened in slow motion and too fast all at once. Rodriguez's hand went to her weapon. Marcus pushed me behind him. Derek's smile widened, the gun loose in his hand like an afterthought. You couldn't just let me go, could you, Sarah? Derek's voice was calm, almost cheerful. Had to play detective with your tattooed boyfriend. Had to keep digging. Derek, put the gun down. Rodriguez had her weapon drawn, but Derek was standing near a table with 2 teenagers. Any shot would risk civilians. Can't do that, officer. See? I've got a story to tell, and Sarah needs to hear how she caused all of this. I started, but Marcus's hand on my arm stopped me. Let him talk, Marcus said quietly. He wants an audience. Give him one. Derek laughed. Smart. You always were smarter than Jake. He never figured out that you were the one driving. He thought you were the mastermind. Spent 5 years telling anyone who'd listen that Marcus Sullivan forced him into that robbery. He waved the gun casually. But I knew different. I saw the police reports. Jake pulled the trigger. Jake made the choice that ruined both your lives. And what did he get? 3 years and a hero's welcome home. So you killed him, I said, pieces clicking into place. You killed your own brother. I killed the man who destroyed our family. Derek's eyes were bright, feverish. After Jake testified against Marcus, Dad couldn't look at him. Mom pretended he didn't exist. I was the only one who stood by him. And you know what Jake did? Kept committing crimes. Kept using the Sullivan job as his excuse. I had to go along. I didn't have a choice. That's all he ever said. Never took responsibility. Never changed. So you decided to kill him and frame Marcus? Rodriguez edged closer. That's your justification. It's poetic justice. Derek's voice rose. Marcus paid for Jake's crime. Jake should have paid for his own. And Sarah, his eyes found mine. Sweet, naive Sarah. You were supposed to need me. I was protecting you, clearing out the trash in your life, and you thanked me by running to a convict. You weren't protecting me, I said, finding my voice. You were controlling me. I was loving you. Derek's hand tightened on the gun. But you couldn't see it because of him. Because Marcus played his little game with his letters and his gentleness and his broken bird routine. I didn't play anything, Marcus said, his voice steady. I just saw someone worth noticing. Yeah? Well, I saw her first. I saw her for 2 years before you came along with your prison wisdom and your reformed act. Derek turned to me. I know you called the cops. I know you've been building a case. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Officer Rodriguez that you made it all up, that you were confused. That Marcus manipulated you into accusing me. No. Sarah, Marcus started, but I stepped out from behind him. No, I repeated, stronger. I'm not letting you rewrite reality. You stalked me. You harassed me. You killed your brother and tried to frame Marcus. And you know what the saddest part is? Marcus actually understood why you were angry. He told me Jake's testimony hurt him too, but he accepted responsibility for his part. He grew. You just festered. Derek's face twisted with rage. You think you're so smart, both of you. You think you solved the mystery, but you missed something crucial. The insurance, Marcus said suddenly. Jake had life insurance from his parole program, and you're the beneficiary because your parents disowned him. Derek's smile returned. $200,000. Enough to start over, enough to disappear. But first, I needed to make sure no one connected me to Jake's death. Enter Marcus Sullivan, convicted felon, documented history with the victim, prints on the murder weapon. He looked at Rodriguez. I stole that knife from Jake's storage unit. Jake kept all of Marcus's stuff after the fiancé cleared out. Tools, clothes, kitchen stuff. He was going to sell it, but I had a better use for it. Derek, you're confessing to murder in front of a police officer, Rodriguez said carefully. Put the gun down and we can talk about what? Reduced sentence? Life instead of death penalty? I'm not going to prison. Derek raised the gun, and I realized with cold clarity that he was going to shoot. Probably Rodriguez first, then Marcus, then me. He'd come here to tie up loose ends. Marcus moved before I could think, shoving me hard to the side. The gun went off. Someone screamed, me, maybe, or the teenagers. Rodriguez fired back. Derek stumbled, clutching his shoulder, the gun clattering across the diner floor. In the chaos, I scrambled toward Marcus, who'd fallen when he pushed me. Marcus, are you? He groaned, sitting up. I'm okay. You okay? I nodded, unable to speak, watching Rodriguez handcuff Derek while calling for backup. Other officers arrived within minutes. Apparently, Rodriguez had called for backup before the meeting, not trusting Derek's state of mind. At the hospital, while doctors checked Marcus for injuries, just bruises from hitting the floor, Rodriguez took my statement. Derek's confessing to everything, she said. The murder, the frame-up, all of it. He's talking faster than his lawyer can shut him up. So Marcus is cleared. Completely. The parole violation is dropped. The murder investigation is closed. She looked at Marcus, who was being discharged. You're free, Marcus. Actually free this time. He stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. I'm free. Free. I watched emotions wash across his face. Relief, disbelief, something like grief. I need to call Emma's parents. They need to know I'm not a murderer. They already know, Rodriguez said gently. I called them myself. They said maybe in a few years, when Emma's older, if you're interested, they'd be open to discussing supervised visits. Marcus sat down hard on the hospital bed, his hands over his face. His shoulders shook, and I realized he was crying. Deep, silent sobs from someone who'd forgotten how to cry in front of others. I sat beside him, my arm around his shoulders, and let him break. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city. Marcus stood in the hospital parking lot, his face tilted toward the light like he'd forgotten what sunrise looked like without bars in the way. What do I do now? He asked. I've spent 6 months living like I could lose everything again at any moment. Now you're telling me I get to just live. Yeah, I said, taking his hand. You get to just live. With me if you want. He pulled me close, his forehead against mine. I want a lot of things. I want to meet my daughter someday. I want to work a job that matters. He paused. I want to take you to dinner, a real date, where we sit in public and no one looks at us like we're making a mistake. That sounds perfect, I said. But even as we stood there, planning a future that suddenly seemed possible, a news van pulled into the parking lot. A reporter jumped out, camera already rolling. Marcus Sullivan? Can you comment on your wrongful imprisonment and the real killer being your accuser's ex-boyfriend? Is it true you're considering a lawsuit against the police department? Marcus tensed beside me, and I felt the moment he realized freedom came with its own complications. His story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The media storm lasted 3 weeks. Ex-con framed by victim's brother made headlines. Defense attorneys called, offering to take wrongful imprisonment cases. Documentary producers wanted to tell Marcus's story. Everyone wanted a piece of the narrative. Redemption, revenge, romance. Marcus turned them all down. "I'm not a story," he told the last producer who called. "I'm just a guy trying to live right." But living right turned out to be complicated when everyone knew your name. Marcus's boss at the janitorial company, spooked by the attention, let him go. The temp agency stopped calling. Even getting an apartment became difficult once landlords Googled him and found articles about the murder case. "This is worse than before," Marcus said one night, sitting in my apartment, which had basically become our apartment, though neither of us acknowledged it officially yet. Before, I was anonymous. I could disappear into the background. Now I'm not the wrongly accused ex-con. It's like I'm defined by prison all over again, just differently. "So we redefine you," I said. "What do you want to be?" He looked at me like I'd asked him to solve quantum physics. "I want to be someone my daughter wouldn't be ashamed to know." "Then let's work toward that. What skills do you have? What did you do before?" "Construction, carpentry, mostly. I was good with my hands, good at building things." I pulled out my laptop. "The clinic where I work is expanding. They need someone to build new exam rooms, update the kennels. It's not glamorous, but it's legitimate work with a company that knows your story and doesn't care." Marcus looked skeptical. "They'd hire me." Dr. Chen already said yes. She said, and I quote, "Anyone who protects my staff deserves a chance." The first day Marcus showed up at the clinic in work clothes, carrying his tools, I saw him transform. He moved with purpose, confidence, the way someone moves when they're doing something they're good at. By the end of the first week, he'd redesigned the kennel layout to be more efficient and calmer for the animals. Dr. Chen gave him a raise. "You know what I realized?" Marcus said one Saturday, covered in sawdust, taking a break in my office. "In prison, everything was about surviving the present. You don't plan, you don't dream, you just exist. But this," he gestured at the half-built exam room, "this is building a future. I'm making something that'll be here long after I'm gone." "You're good at it," I said. "You should consider starting your own business. Renovations, custom carpentry. With my record, who'd hire me? People who care more about quality work than past mistakes." I'd been thinking about this for weeks. "Marcus, your story is out there. Instead of hiding from it, use it. Market yourself as someone who understands second chances, work with nonprofits, community centers, organizations that help ex-cons, build your reputation through word of mouth." He looked at me with something like wonder. "You really believe in me, don't you?" "I believe in the man who brought me wildflowers, who fixed my lock without asking, who noticed me when everyone else looked through me. That man can do anything." 3 months later, Marcus registered an LLC. Sullivan Renovations, Second Chances Built Right. His first client was a halfway house that needed repairs. Then a community center. Then a parole office that wanted to update their facilities with input from someone who'd actually been through the system. "It's ironic," Marcus said one night, reviewing contracts at my dining table. "I spent 5 years trying to forget prison. Now I'm building a business around it." "You're not building around prison. You're building around redemption. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Prison is what happened to you. Redemption is what you chose to do after." 6 months after Derek's arrest, Emma's parents, the parents who'd adopted Marcus's daughter, reached out. They wanted to meet, not for Emma's sake yet. They were careful to clarify, but to understand who Marcus was now. I drove with him to their suburban home, his hands shaking on his knees the entire drive. What if they hate me? What if they see me and realize they made a mistake considering this? Then we leave and try again later. But Marcus? They reached out. They want to know you. Emma's father, Tom, and her mother, Lisa, met us at the door. They were younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, with kind faces and the exhausted look of parents of a 5-year-old. "Thank you for coming," Lisa said, ushering us into a living room filled with toys and photographs. One photo, prominently displayed, showed Emma, dark hair, gray eyes, Marcus's smile. We talked for 2 hours. Marcus told them everything. The desperation that led to the robbery, his time in prison, his release, the framing, the exoneration. He didn't make excuses or minimize. He just told the truth. "We've been watching your business," Tom said. "We've seen the articles about Sullivan renovations. What you're building, it's impressive." "I'm trying," Marcus said quietly. "I want Emma to have a father she can be proud of, even if I'm not in her life." About that, Lisa exchanged a glance with Tom. "We think in a year or two we'd like to arrange a meeting. Supervised, casual. Maybe you could do some work on our house, and she'd see you around. We'd introduce you as a friend first. Let her get to know you naturally." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "You'd do that. She deserves to know where she comes from, and you deserve to know the incredible little girl you helped create." Lisa smiled. "But Marcus, if you're going to be in her life, you need to be stable. No more crisis, no more drama, just steady, boring reliability." "I can do boring," Marcus said, and I squeezed his hand. "I'm very good at boring these days." As we drove home, Marcus was quiet. "Finally," he said, "I never thought I'd get this. Any of this. You, a business, a chance to know Emma. I thought prison was the end of my story." "It was the end of one story," I said. "This is the beginning of another." "What's this story called?" I thought about it. About the anonymous letters that had started everything. About the moment I'd opened my door to a stranger covered in tattoos and hope. About choosing to see beyond the labels society put on people. "It's called The Man Who Noticed," I said. "It's about someone who learned to see beauty again. And the woman who learned to see him." Marcus pulled over then, in a parking lot overlooking the city, and kissed me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever built. "I love you," he said. I should have said it before, but I didn't think I had the right. I didn't think an ex-con got to say those words to someone like you. Someone like me. Someone good. Someone who deserves better than— "Marcus," I interrupted. "I love you too. Not despite your past. Not because of it. Just because you're you. The man who brings me wildflowers and fixes things without asking. The man who noticed me." 1 year later, Sullivan Renovations had 15 employees. Most of them former inmates Marcus had trained. We'd moved into a larger apartment together, one with space for Marcus's tools and my veterinary textbooks. I'd started classes to finally open my own practice. And on a Saturday morning in spring, we drove to Tom and Lisa's house where a 5-year-old girl named Emma was playing in the backyard. She looked up when we arrived, her gray eyes curious. "Emma," Lisa called, "come meet Marcus. He's the man I told you about. The one who's going to build your playhouse." Emma ran over, all energy and innocence, and looked up at Marcus with his own eyes. "A playhouse? With a slide?" "With a slide," Marcus confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "And whatever else you want. Can Sarah help too?" Emma pointed at me. "She looks nice." "She is nice," Marcus said. "She's the nicest person I know." As we spent the afternoon sketching playhouse designs with Emma, watching her laugh and dream out loud, I looked at Marcus and saw something I'd never seen before in all our time together. Peace. Not the careful control of someone expecting disaster, but genuine peace. That night, lying in bed, Marcus whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For opening the door. For seeing me. For giving me a reason to build a life worth living." I turned to face him. "You built that life yourself. I just witnessed it." "No," he said. "You made me believe it was possible. Before you, I was just serving time outside of prison. After you, I started actually living." "So what do we do now?" I asked. "Now that the story has a happy ending." "We keep writing it," Marcus said. "One day at a time, building playhouses and businesses and a life. Together." And that's exactly what we did. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.